3, 4.
We just live right now, man. It's going down, excited for the season. You know, we coming off a playoff win. I mean, you know, we had a couple wins.
Hello, and welcome to Diaries, a Milwaukee Bucks podcast presented by us, the staff at Brew Hoop, or should I say presented by us, the members of the Milwaukee Bucks Podcasters Union, because I don't have Kyle Carr with me tonight. I don't have Adam Paris. I don't have anybody from Brew Hoop. I'm Riley Feldman, one of your usual co-hosts, but I'm joined by co-host in a crossover so ambitious, so outlandish, so crazy that even the writers of the MCU would say, that's not possible. You can't do that. Tonight, I'm joined by, if I'm AEW, they're WWE. They're going to correct me if I'm wrong about that. It's Camille Davis and Justin Garcia from Locked On Bucks. Guys, how are you doing this evening?
After an intro like that, the only answer is good. Great.
Yeah. I mean, Camille can take WWE. I'm probably more like Ring of Honor at this point, but as long as it's not AEW.
Okay. Well, I apologize for picking the only other three-letter acronym that I knew in the wrestling space off the top of my head, but you guys can get into that and correct it on the record down the line. What we're doing tonight is this is the first in a series of season preview podcasts we're going to be doing here at Dear Diaries. We're going to be trying to get guests from all your favorite Bucks-related podcasts, every staff member from Brew Hoop and beyond to answer a couple of standard questions to set the table for the season to come. Compare and contrast answers and see where we're kind of all at as we head into the season. Before we get started, though, I'm going to run Camille and Justin through what we do for all first-time co-hosts. I'm going to ask you guys to give a little bit of background to our listeners and viewers who may not be as familiar with you. I mean, who doesn't know Locked On Bucks? But just in case if they're late to the party, Camille, we'll start with you. What's your path to this podcast this evening?
Yeah, so I was working at a nonprofit foundation in the city of Milwaukee post out of college. And while I was there, I was like, I really want to get into sports. I went to Cardinal Stritch, rest in peace, Cardinal Stritch. And I got my master's in sport management. And while I was getting my master's, I was like, I want to do something sports related, but like I have a full-time job that pays pretty decently and I have insurance. So like, what else can I do on the side? I created a Technical File podcast with 3 other friends of mine, where we focus on NBA, NFL, and wrestling for the most part now. And that show led to appearances on Locked On Bucks as a guest, which then led to, when Kane was leaving, the opportunity to interview and try to get that job full time. So that was like my pathway to podcasting. And then once Locked On Bucks came, I said, let me just jump out the window and try to do this podcasting thing full time. So I left my foundation job and now it's been straight podcasting, hustling in these podcast streets ever since last year. So that's how I ended up here in this moment.
Awesome. How about you, Justin?
Yeah. I mean, I got to know Kane in 2018 when he made the leap to come over to America. And I was doing a show for the Bucks called Courtside Live, where it was very bare bones, that it was just me talking for an hour. And we kind of realized like, this isn't really working with no breaks and repeating the same thing. So we figured out other things to spruce it up, like using coach audio. And then I was like, what if we get more microphones and I can have guests? So we did that. And I had Kane on that show all the time. We got to know each other and would see each other at practices and stuff. And when he left, Camille and I it felt like co-hosts of the show for the last year and a half anyway. So he was like, oh, I encouraged them to just have you guys do it. So that's how I got to Locked On Bucks. I've been, this year will be the 10th year that I've worked on the Bucks radio network too, working for WTMJ and various roles with them along the way after college. And that was the thing, like whenever anybody asks, like, how did you get there? Like, well, I mean, one, you need luck, you need people that have your back and can open doors for you, but like also be willing to do the worst jobs possible, the worst hours and the worst pay. Like I did that for about 7 or so years before I started to do stuff with the Bucks and just have been able to somehow continue doing that.
That's awesome. And related to worst jobs, worst pay, you're now 10 years later doing a guest spot on another podcast to preview the season. So we appreciate
Well, I
that.
had, when I started at WTMJ, I was working my shift. I was part-time and still am, but my shift was only Friday nights and Saturday nights from 6 to midnight. And I was just a board op. So I would get all of the like conservative talk shows like Laura Ingraham and Dennis Miller that I would just fire the brakes for that. Like that was my glamorous start to radio.
Yeah. Well, this will be hopefully a higher note than that. And I appreciate both you guys making the time to come on here and join. I'm going to go ahead without further ado, because we got limited time here, to pick your brains about everything Milwaukee Bucks. We're going to dive right into the questions. Let's give Camille, I'm going to have you call it in the air, heads or tails, to see who gets to go first. I'm flipping. Go ahead and call.
Tails never fails.
It is tails. Would you like to be the first to answer the first question, or would you defer?
I'll defer.
Wow.
I didn't expect that option. I'll defer. I like that.
Okay. All right. Well, here we go. Then we're going to switch it up. Every second question, that'll be Camille go first, and we'll go throughout here. So let's get started. Justin, who's the newest Buck that you're most intrigued by heading into the 2024-2025 season?
I think the obvious choice for a lot of people to be Gary Trent Jr., and I'm certainly intrigued by him, but I would probably say DeLon Wright, just because of, you saw some of it in the playoffs last year against the Celtics with the Heat, and even some Celtics fans saying like, man, that guy, he kind of worried us with his defensive ability and ability to knock down open shots. And that was the big void that this team has had for the last few years. He's a massive upgrade over Pat Beverly. And I'm curious to see if he's one of the closers for this team. If you're playing him alongside Damian Lillard, I'm almost inclined to think he has a better chance to close than Gary Trent Jr. So of the new members, he's the one that intrigues me the most.
I like that one. I went a whole different direction, which is part of why I wanted to defer.
She's going two ways. She's going Oshkosh is what she's going with, folks.
I'm going AJ
Stanley
Johnson.
Umude.
I'm going with a rookie. And it's not even a for now. I don't expect him to do too much this season, but for down the line, it's just the whole fact of when the Bucks drafted AJ, I was just like, wait, what? We're doing this? I was unexpected to me. So to see him and then in the summer league show those flashes of what, like, oh, okay, there could be something there. Like, I'm just very intrigued about his skill set. We've seen this summer him going on like his world tour of trainings with different NBA players. We've seen him with Paul George, with KD, with Dame. So like, I'm just really interested in seeing his development. Don't expect too much amount of this season, but I'm looking forward to the Herd games and seeing him just get the playing time and what might come next from young AJ.
Those are good picks. We got on the high end and the low end of the rotation, presumable rotation. So I'm glad we were able to cover both halves. Okay. Speaking about the young Bucks, I'm going to ask you guys, we'll start with Camille for this one. The young Buck, third year or less, who you think will have the greatest impact on this season. Could be regular season, could be playoffs. If you're feeling ambitious, that group includes AJ Green, Andre Jackson Jr., Marjon Beauchamp, AJ Johnson, Tyler Smith, and a bunch of two-way guys if you were feeling really ambitious, but probably that core five group. Oh, and Chris Livingston, of course. That's probably your group of six. Sorry, Chris.
Yeah, can't forget Chris Livingston for Justin. But for me, it's AJ Green going into this season. He was the young Buck who we did not see in Summer League. He graduated from Summer League this year as a guy entering to his third year, undrafted guy who made his way onto the team and showed that he has a real NBA skill set with his ability to shoot the ball. He was underwhelming in the playoff performances against the Pacers for sure, but I'm looking to see how he grows from that, how he bounces back, how many minutes he gets this season going into the year, and just his overall growth. Like, again, a real NBA talent with his ability to shoot the ball. I believe he's like a 41% three-point shooter for his career in Milwaukee so far. So seeing how that translates and seeing how his game grows, like that's the young Buck where I'm like, I want to see where this one goes.
My heart says Chris Livingston, and you know what? I'm going to stick with the heart this time.
Go with the heart.
I'm a true believer in Chris Livingston, and I think just because, if for no other reason than the void of guys they have that could play the four and have that malleability. I mean, it's basically Taurean Prince. What happens if injuries come into account? He's a guy that could all of a sudden become important. So I think a lot of people would be inclined to say Ajax, and it's tough to dispute that. but I'm going to go with Chris Livingston.
Okay, I respect it. I was very high on Chris out of Summer League. He was, of all the guys, quite obviously the most consistent performances
All right,
throughout.
so we
AJ,
found like 4 or 5 people. So
we're going to start a club.
We're
and a
starting
lot of us host Bucks podcast, oddly enough. So I don't know if that's a sign of a kiss of death for Chris Livingston or not, but good luck to you, Chris. I'm going to audible real quick, free talk question. So we have AJ Green, AJ Johnson, Ajax. Let's just agree, let's start hashing it out now amongst all the content creators. What's going to be the ways we'll differentiate? So AJG, just say Green, AJ Johnson, AJJ. Like, how are you going to be able to delineate between those three when you're talking about them?
Ajax is the easiest. Andre Jackson Jr. because the Jax is different. So we got that one settled. I mean, everyone calls AJ Green Dairy Bird as well. So I'm sure you'll see that floating around.
Double J.
Yeah,
like
I like A-double-J.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll keep workshopping it, but I think it's going to be maybe our greatest challenge this year is to come up with ways to have nice alliterative nicknames for all of them. Okay. Next couple questions are going to be some ranking questions, which is, I think, where the controversy is going to start to fill in. So first ranking question, this will go to Justin to begin. It's ranking the new Bucks, the 3 new free agent acquisitions, and how well they will fill out their presumed role. Now, what their role is going to be in the rotation is kind of up to you, but your choices are to rank from best fit to iffiest fit: Taurean Prince, DeLon Wright, and Gary Trent Jr. How would you rank those 3 in expectations of how well they will fit their role on the team?
I would say DeLon Wright number 1, but I mean, I think he and Gary Trent Jr. I think is going to be a perfect fit. So I think they're going to be neck and neck. But I would say DeLon Wright just because of what he brings as the point of attack defender. Then Gary Trent Jr. not too far behind him. Taurean Prince, I'm curious to see. So I would slot him in last. I know if you listen to Lakers fans, they would probably drive down any expectations that you have for him. But I mean, he's taking Jay Crowder's spot, which there's no way he's going to, without being too harsh, give you less than Jay Crowder did a year ago. And I think the expectations are smaller for him than they are for the other 2 as well.
Camille?
We're close. I would go Gary Trent Jr. 1, and then DeLon Wright, and then Prince. And to your point, Justin, I do think the first 2 are pretty close. I'm giving Gary Trent Jr. the edge there just because of the perceived role that he'll have on this team. I just think he's stepping into a bigger role that I think he fits into really, really well, of being the starting shooting guard for the Milwaukee Bucks. I think there's some defensive upside with Trent as well that wasn't there with Malik Beasley. And I'm really curious to see him in this particular setting, because the last few years with Toronto, there's been some chaos when it comes to lineups. And then also what was asked of him was a very heavy offensive load. So I'm curious to see what Trent looks like here in Milwaukee, where he's like, okay, it's Giannis and it's Dame, and it's probably Chris, and then here comes you. And what does that look like for him? The open looks that he'll be able to get generated off of the gravity of Giannis, of Dame, of Chris, and also what he looks like if he's running bench units, and what freedom does he have there to lean into the offensive bag. We saw a little bit more in Toronto. So I would go Trent and then Wright for the defensive purposes, because the Bucks needed point of attack defense in the worst way last year. So I would go Wright second for that, and then Prince third. He feels like more of a known entity at this point. And to Justin's point, an upgrade over Jay Crowder, who's my boy. Shout out to Marquette. But we just didn't get too much from Jay last year.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting with Gary and DeLon, because in a sense, they're actually competing against each other, like you were saying, Justin, for who's going to be in that closing lineup. And with Trent Jr., it's a lot more straightforward of understanding what lane he's going to fill. Whereas with DeLon, as it has been for years and years with any guard who comes off the bench, how do you fit with the stars, with the Bucks? How do you fit with Giannis? How do you fit with Dame year 2? Like, I think it'll be a lot more questions. There's probably maybe more like a higher ceiling with DeLon. It just depends on how well you think it'll fit, and then also how Doc Rivers is going to end up using him in the end of the season as well. So, okay, this next one's where the real controversy begins, and Camille played it wrong by deferring, because she's going to have to answer first on this one. You're going to have to rank these players in terms of their importance to the season. Okay. Damian Lillard, Chris Middleton, Brook Lopez. Most important to least important.
All right, number one, I'm going with Damian Lillard. I mean, he's got to be Dame for all of this to work. The roster is constructed around Dame and Giannis. So if Dame is off, all of this is off. So I'll go with Dame 1. 2, I'm going Brook Lopez. In large part because his value is so tied into the defensive identity of this team as well. So if Brook Lopez isn't right, it's going to hurt the Bucks. And in addition to that, the big rotation for the Bucks is just kind of thin. It's Bobby, it's Brook, and it's Giannis. And after that, it's like if something happens or if one of those three don't perform to the level you expect, it's going to cause big holes into that rotation. And then I will go with Chris third. And this is not like a personal ranking of my favorites because everybody who listens to Locked On Bucks and who knows me knows Chris Middleton is my favorite Buck. He's one of my favorite players, just period. But in terms of importance to this Bucks team this upcoming season, I put him at third because of what the other two are looking to bring to the table. And with Chris moving to being that third option for the Bucks, I don't want to say he's a luxury piece because the Bucks are going to need Chris Middleton to really get to that next level. But if something happened to Chris Middleton, I see more avenues to try to replace what he does on the roster as it's currently constructed than I do with those other two positions. The bigs are thin, and the point guards, the guard rotation is also really thin. Meanwhile, when it comes to wings, you have a few options to throw out there.
This is going to be my greatest challenge yet, to have to clip all of that in a certain way and post it to make Camille look like the biggest hater on the phone. so that's my challenge that I'm gonna have to take up after this. Justin, your rebuttal, please.
Maybe it's because we just talked about this recently. I have the exact same order and a lot of the same logic. I think the Dame piece, as Camille mentioned, it's a top heavy team, and I think the Bucks are outside of the contenders window if Damian Lillard is not a superstar this year. So he's incredibly important to get to that level, as we've talked about. You guys have talked about it too. It's not to suggest Dame was bad last year. It wasn't what you expected to get, and there was a lot of reasons that went into it. So him being that guy is going to be crucial for the Bucks because that makes it work with he and Giannis. Chris, I would also slot third because of what Camille said. You know, if Brook Lopez goes down, your Bobby Portis and Giannis are covering the center role, and then it's Taurean Prince. We need you to play forward. Maybe it opens the door for Chris Livingston too. So there's some real concern there. And then with Chris, you know, the Dame trade last year, I think alleviated pressure from him because if you still had the old roster makeup, Chris Middleton is much more important, that he needs to shoulder the scoring load, and you need him to be healthy with Damian Lillard. And if it's the Dame that you expect, that takes that pressure off Chris, where you can kind of massage, whether it's the games played, the minutes, and just overall usage, and pick your spots for him. So I think for that reason, I would slot him third.
I think it's all pretty reasonable outside of my being a troll and saying I'm going to clip it up. And also in the past year, for all the ups and downs that happened in the past season, Chris did miss large chunks of it for reasons outside of his control. And the team was still able to function relatively well without him. He throws in there, he's the supercharger you throw in, which is obviously, like you're saying, it's not a luxury item. He's a key component to why it all works. But we also saw when Brook is completely under siege all season long, everything's going to suffer. So how do you bring him up? How do you build up the perimeter defense to make his role better and then thus raise the floor of it? So I do also want to note there's a disturbing amount of Tyler Smith erasure going on in the bigs discussion, big rotation discussion, but we'll just put a pin in that for right now. We're going to move on to now our free choice questions. These are kind of fill in the blank questions. We're going to start with Justin on this one. What do you think is the team's current greatest weakness? So it could be something specific on the court, could be something off the court, whatever you think you're going into the season, you're looking at him, you say, that has me still a little bit concerned.
Oh man.
Hard to pick one, but if you can pick one.
Man, they're old. And I guess I would two kind of blend into one. So we don't know, as we talked about, who the closing group is for this team, and not just because like who's going to step up and take it, but we still don't know if some of these guys are capable of being that. The old 82 versus 16 debate. I think jury's still out with Gary Trent Jr. You've seen some flashes. Granted, he hasn't been in that spot a lot, but we don't know if he is a playoff proven player. I think you have the sense that DeLon Wright is. Again, you go back to the Lakers fans pointing out Taurean Prince is not. So you have those questions. But to me, it's just who closes and are these playoff caliber players? Because you trust Giannis, Dame, Chris, and Brooke. We trust him as well. But I guess it all kind of comes down to who closes. And if I pinpoint one specific area, it's the three and a wing defender that this team just doesn't have. And it kind of feels like that's the hairpin that ties it all together, because you could move things around and play Chris as a small ball four with Giannis, and you could have DeLon Wright in the backcourt to help offset some of the Dame stuff. If you had a guy that was a reliable, proven, almost 3-and-D player to play at that position, and they just don't have it, which, you can criticize the moves along the way, but also how did you realistically expect to get it this offseason?
Yeah. For me, I'd probably just go with the age, health rationale with the team. Like, I think this team is currently constructed can be a championship contending team for sure. But as we've seen the last few seasons since they won the title, can they be healthy enough once the playoffs start to actually make that push? And we haven't seen that for this team since they won the finals. And even when they won the finals, we were dealing with Giannis and his leg injury that he came back from miraculously to play in the finals to begin with. So for me, it's really health. And we saw again last year with Giannis going down in April, we saw how injuries also affected the continuity and the ability for this team to really gel together under Doc Rivers, because once Doc came into play, Chris got injured a few games into his coaching tenure. And then from there, Dame was dealing with some knick-knack injuries, and then Giannis had the calf, and then he was out. So you just didn't get to see them even get that time under Doc on the court together. So for me, I'll go with health and age for this team.
Yeah, and it's interesting too with the age component, because Giannis is the one who is missed for mostly freak and or overuse injuries. So it's like the youngest component of the core is the one that's missing. So it's like, we're looking in the wrong direction.
Because he's actually
sorry. Bobby, I would have voted for you for 6th man of the year if I had the ability to. I promise. Okay, let's go from concern to things you would like to see, or the more positive angle. So we all have the heavy cross to bear of watching the team 82 plus games this season. It's usually enjoyable, but sometimes can be a little chaotic, or there can be some slog nights. I'm looking at you, Orlando, on the road on a Tuesday in February.
Any game against the Memphis Grizzlies, the last
game against the Grizzlies. Run through it. There's a long list of nights that you really don't want to sit down and tune into Bucks basketball necessarily. So I want to ask you guys, what's something that you hope to see the Bucks do during the regular season? i.e., what would make watching 82 games worthwhile for you as an analyst, as a fan, whatever angle you want to play it on? We'll go to you, Camille, first.
So this was a great question. It made me really think about it, because I've been watching the Bucks consistently for a while. I've watched very, very bad Bucks teams, to the point where a lot of this, I'm like, man, listen, I'm still on the high from the fact that we're good. This is a consistently good team. So for me, what I hope to see from the Bucks this season is more consistent stretches that show their growth or their dominance just in the league itself. So last season, the Bucks had 3 different at least 5-game win streaks throughout the entire season. Boston had 7 5+ game win streaks throughout the year. And I don't even need it to be that dominant. We saw what Boston did throughout the entire year in the East, where they were just rolling. It doesn't even have to be that. I look at the Dallas Mavericks, another team that also had 3 different 5+ game win streaks throughout the year. But for them, it's the timing of it, right? For the Bucks, most of those 5+ game win streaks came under Adrian Griffin. They came in the first half of the season when the schedule was a bit easier for the team. If the Bucks could do what they did out of All-Star break, when they had that 5+ game win streak, where you're like, okay, I'm seeing it happen. But then they followed that up with the embarrassing losses, where you're just like, okay, who are you guys for real? I would love for it to be more like what Dallas did, if that was the case, where you see it all after, the trade deadline, after this is the final team you're going to get, and you see heading into the playoffs, like, they have grown. And I really feel excited about what's going to come after this. So I would say just that consistent dominance throughout the year.
I mean, same as Camille, there was a couple of things that I was really drawn to with this one, but I guess first and foremost, I need to see them be better on the road. That they were below 500 last year. That wasn't a staple under Bud, and they had been a pretty good road team. You look at the two teams that played in the finals a year ago, and I think it was 52-30 was their combined road record for the Celtics and the Mavs. So you just can't be bad on the road. So that certainly has to get better, because it kind of reached the point, to Camille's point, that you knew it's on the road. Like, here's this, they're probably going to drop this game and this game and this game. And we just saw that start to pile up. So fixing that, I think will certainly push forward a lot of enjoyment for Bucks fans that are watching these road games. But the other big piece for me is just versatility. And we heard that word tossed around a lot in the offseason. I think people assume that meant, well, if they're looking for versatility, it means you got to trade Brook Lopez. You can play different ways. And we kind of made the stance from the onset of like, no, versatility is how you play with Brook Lopez, how you play with Giannis at center, how you play with someone else. So let's try some of these different things, different configurations and lineups. Part of it last year, I know it's easy to pile on Doc Rivers, but they didn't have the most malleable roster to try that a season ago. It's not great. I wouldn't stack it up against some other teams in the Eastern Conference with that malleability this year, but it's better than it was a season ago. So I do think the door is open for them to try some of those things. And the other part of that, which is, again, a habitual knock on Doc Rivers, is the young guys and seeing their development and seeing them included in some of those spots. So I think that all kind of blends into the versatility component, which I would still put above winning on the road for personal enjoyment, but just for team success, like the road record has to be better.
Yeah. And of course, a lot of the most debilitating losses last year were all on the road. It'd be like embarrassing to the Houston Rockets after Giannis scores 48. It'd be like right before the All-Star break, Memphis has 4 players.
We look up who is Gigi Jackson.
So even just for sanity's sake, if we could be like, yes, a little bit better so that I'm not coming on here every weekend and be like, wow, that was a really brutal 3 game stretch there, huh, guys? So I tend to agree. And I love that question too, because for everybody, it can be as micro as I just want to see them spam Dame Giannis pick and roll like over and over and over again. Or like, I love, I don't know why I keep going to Tyler Smith. I swear I'm not like a true believer, but I want to see Tyler
Smith fan club.
Yes, no. It's a very lonely.
I have to reject your application for the Chris Livingston fan club.
I can't. It's an exclusive group at the Chris Livingston Island, and I understand I can't have feet on 2 different islands. But it could just be as specific as that. But
like I was also, because I've been asked similar questions throughout the offseason, and I keep gravitating towards Damian Lillard related answers. Like one was like, what's your hot take for the Bucks? And I was like, man, do I want to go with like Dame is going to be the leading scorer? But like, that's almost what I want to see is Giannis last year, through all the ups and downs and coaching changes and inconsistencies, he was the constant from start to finish. I don't know that I'm willing to say, hey, this team is better off if Giannis is supplemental and Dame is your leader in terms of the scoring. But I hesitate to even say I would like to see it, but I wouldn't be opposed to Damian Lillard being the 30-point-a-game guy and Giannis being the guy that's just continuing to build on his efficiency, that his field goal percentage and effective field goal percentage continue to climb because Dame is taking over. And you have shooters around the floor, too, that everything opens up for Giannis. And that reduces, as you mentioned, the usage injuries, and that reduces some of that on him.
Yeah. It's a fascinating place to be because the reason you want to push Giannis that direction is just physically, he's capable of doing so much more than Dame ever could. Like that's just literally how physics are going to work. Right. And then on top of that, we're in this really weird spot with Dame, not in like a negative sense, but last year was sort of a letdown based on expectations. And now it's like, you remember that Dame is on the team? It's like, I just don't know. It's hard for anybody, informed or otherwise, to really make an educated guess as to what he's going to look like this season. Like, does a full off season resting, kicking back, also working with Doc Rivers, working with Giannis, what does that pay in terms of dividends? And we just can't really put an expectation on that until we actually see it. So.
Doc Rivers, David Goggins, too, the work he's putting in there.
That put a little red flag up for me, but I'm going to let that go for the moment. Okay. Speaking of Dame, he might have something to do in this next question. Another fill in the blank. in order for the Bucks to win a title, they must blank. And please don't answer win 16 games because it's funny, but I'm looking for a little bit more from my esteemed guests. Camille, we'll go to you first.
All right, let me cross out win 16 games.
Can we go back to Justin?
Something.
I need a minute to think.
No, I mean, honestly, for the Bucks winning title, they must remain healthy. Like that's number one for me. Like they just have to make it there healthy. And then once they get to the playoffs, how do their bodies hold up to the grind that comes with playoff ball? Again, you don't have games back to back. No, but you're playing heavier minutes. You're going to be in a more physical game where the refs are going to let more go. So like the regular season is long, 82 games. Are they going to be able to spread out that playing time enough where the guys are fresh, but also ready to go once the playoffs come? Because you also don't want it to be a situation where guys are only playing 30 minutes a game. And then come playoff time, when they're asked to play 40, however many minutes it's going to be, they can't handle it at that point. So it's like, how do you be smart with the conditioning of these athletes and get them to that place in the playoffs where they can enter into it, be healthy, and be ready to go? So health, Bucks got to be healthy.
Yeah, health, I mean, would be my number one answer too, because when they've had a big three, they've still yet to lose when that group is healthy. I don't want to take Camille's answer though. So the supplemental ones, I think you have to be a good road team. As we just mentioned, you can't be a bad road team. Especially since, look, there's a chance they could finish 5th in the Eastern Conference. And that means you're going to have to win on the road repeatedly in every single round. So you have to improve the way that you play on the road. And there's no like set number of where they need to fall or ranking. You just can't be bad on one side of the ball either. Like the defense cannot be anywhere near it was the first half of last season. We saw some signs of change the first 10 to 15 games of Doc Rivers. You just can't be in the bottom half of either category. I think we all agree that they probably won't be there offensively. If they do, something has massively gone wrong. But defensively, you gotta, I know I just said I'm not going to put a number in the ranking, but you got to be like in the top 13. So you need to see that too.
History says if you're not top 10, top 13, the odds of you making any deep, I think it was just Denver basically. Yeah. And maybe like one of the Lakers runs like in the early 2000s.
The Denver one deceiving too, because I think they finished 15th, but the second half of the season, they were a top 10 defense.
Yeah, it was pretty depressing when I was going back looking at the numbers from last season. I was like, let's remind myself for positive reasons how much of an uptick the defensive rating took from Griffin to Doc. And it was like,
not that.
Yeah, it's okay.
It was great at first because it was 23rd when Griff was fired, and then you were like, I know we kept spamming, and then you're like, hey, the Bucks are like 7th
back
defense.
It's looking good, y'all. And then
it just fell off a cliff.
Yeah.
Yes. So defense, figuring out the defense. And we were just so used to it being the calling card, and then just wondering how many shots Drew would need to take to make 5 baskets. Was it going to be 30, 35 shots? So to have to switch to the other end is quite the amount of whiplash for us. But yes, the defense improving would be a welcome sight. And I think hopefully the new free agents in particular will have something to do with that. We'll go to our last standard question before we head over into our miscellaneous segments. This one's simple. I will not ask you for the record, but I will ask you to predict the team's finish in the Eastern standings and how far you think they will go in the playoffs. Whoever's got courage. I'm going to leave this one to courage. Whoever wants to answer it first.
Listen, I'm high on. I was telling Justin, I'm high on the Bucks. I've been trying to have people talk me down because I feel like I'm getting to a crazy level of we can do this yearness of it all. So I'm going to say, as of when we're recording this, September 3rd, my prediction for the Bucks. I think a 3rd place finish in the East. And how far they go, I'm saying at least the conference finals.
Oh boy, it's tough with the how far they go. Like I can see the conference finals, but it's tough without knowing.
Yeah, and of course, I'm asking you to prognosticate a year out, and you have no idea what the
so then
bracket
they're
will
going
look
to get
like,
the Pacers
but...
in the second round, and then exactly. They have the ceiling to win the conference as long as they're healthy. And as we mentioned, the Dame piece, if Dame has said all the right things. We've seen him working on all those things this offseason too. If the defense is better than league average and you get health, there's reason to believe this team could win the conference. I landed on 3 or 4 different answers for where they're actually going to finish in the Eastern Conference because of a number of things. Like, number one, what we saw in the East with moves that were made by other teams. The Celtics kept everyone in tow. Kristaps Porzingis, I think a lot of people fail to mention or forget, like, oh yeah, he's not going to play until probably January. So I'm curious to see what that means for them. And also the fact that they just won a championship, and you see it with every single team. Like, the fire isn't there quite as much, that you can ease up and take your foot off the gas pedal just a little bit, and we can save this for the playoffs. I'm not a big Knicks believer. Like, I think there's a lot of red flags, and I need to see it first to see that this team won't wear down, and you can play the Tibbs style in the regular season and through 3 to 4 rounds in the playoffs. So that's the one team. The Knicks and the Bucks are the teams that I would say, if somebody finished, well, somebody is going to finish 5th, but of all those teams that you pointed to, and like, this team could win the conference, those would be the 2 teams most likely to finish 5th. I would say I could see anywhere from 2nd to 5th for the Bucks. I think it depends on how they approach the regular season. If this is look, we tried this. We won the regular season 2 years ago. We pushed for up until the 2 seed, up until that last weekend. And then maybe we took our foot off the gas last year, but we've seen all these different approaches. It didn't work. Let's just stay healthy. Let's develop these young guys. And we don't care what the draw is and who we get. The same approach they took the year they won the title. The difference was that was 2 to 3 teams that you were looking at. And I mean, you could talk yourself into 6 in the Eastern Conference this year. So I'm going to couch it and say they finish 4th. But again, I really want to say 3rd, because I think the Sixers are going to finish with the best record in the regular season. I think that's what they're playing for. And they added Paul George, all the other pieces. Similar to Drew Holiday, I think they're easier to drop in and fit with a team, especially if Embiid can stay healthy. So I think they're going to finish with the most wins. Boston, even without Porzingis, it just works. So again, it depends on how they approach the regular season. That's where I get to. I could see the Bucks finish 2nd. I could see them say, we're cool with being 4th or 5th. So I'm going to pick somewhere in the middle and say 4.
All right. Good. That you guys survived the interrogation. Congratulations. This was a great first go through. I like the answers we got. I'm looking forward to the answers we're going to get from all the other co-hosts that will come on over the coming weeks. And now I'm going to switch over to the miscellaneous segments. Our usual listeners will normally expect me to do rapid fire right now. Consider the segment we just finished as rapid fire. I don't have a fountain pen to talk about this week, but as is tradition, I try to come up with some sort of cleverly named segment for everybody that comes on for a hobby they have. We came up with our collective brain power with Camille and Justin's simulation station. The reason why we're calling it that segment is I've been told by my co-hosts that they're really into wrestling. I assume it's not Olympic wrestling. I'm assuming it's the other kind of wrestling, and NBA 2K. So I'm going to kind of open the floor to you guys. The way I sent it to you is, tell me about a storyline that's recently concluded or that is ongoing in wrestling, assuming that's the proper term, that you're interested in or following closely. And then also NBA 2K is going to be coming out soon. What is the first thing you plan on doing when you download your copy and boot it up? Anybody can take over to go first.
Okay. I feel like we should do the wrestling first, Justin. The storylines that we're most interested in. There's a few really hot ones right now in WWE. But I continue to be just amazed with everything going on around the bloodline and how that story is going to unfold. I mean, the bloodline has been the biggest thing in wrestling for like 4 years now at this point. It feels like maybe 4 years, and it's still ongoing.
It was just the 4-year anniversary.
Yeah, where it's like, I didn't know what was going to happen once Roman Reigns departed TV, and now that he's back, the dynamics at play there. How is this building into WrestleMania? When does The Rock come back? Because I expect for him to come back at some point soon. all the family dynamics. I love that entire storyline. And I'm a huge Jacob Fatu fan at this point. He's my favorite bloodline member. I'm getting ready to start the push him for a title drum really, really soon. I'm all in on Jacob Fatu. So for me, my storyline is definitely the bloodline.
All right, now Justin, react to that like that made sense to you, like you knew the context of what she just said.
Clearly did. Yeah, I mean, that would be my number one choice too, just because I was curious to see how do you pivot. Like it felt like it was really running out of steam as you were getting into WrestleMania. Like, all right, we've had this for years and we know Cody Rhodes is going to win, so I think we're done with it. But the way that they've essentially created a new bloodline and within like a day made Roman Reigns the biggest face in the company has been fascinating. So like that is the number one story in all of wrestling, I would say. I like found myself very bored with the Judgment Day, but what they've done in the last year has been very, very interesting too, with just the way that the two original founding members are now out of the Judgment Day and the way they've built up both of them, and Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley is the biggest female star that they have. And then I don't want to be a total AEW hater, but I was curious to see like what they were doing with Bryan Danielson and how they were going to pull this off, what they were going to do with Swerve and the match that they had, and how they built up this Bryan Danielson story to basically lead up to his retirement, but giving him the title. I thought that was very important because you can't have Bryan Danielson in your company and not have him be a part of your championship lineage. So putting the belt on him and getting back to doing that type of stuff, like they've deviated too much to become WWE light. And that's where my interest had kind of dropped off. So move back towards pushing Bryan Danielson in actual wrestling matches and cutting down on all the rest of it, I think is going to serve them well. So I'm curious to see what they do with the back half of the year here.
All right, a couple of explain it like I'm five follow-up questions for myself and the listeners and viewers at home. So I'm so used to in basketball, other professional sports, like the second something happens, it gets spoiled, if you want to call it that way, by the investigative reporters, journalists, whomever, who have all the sources. Is it typical in the wrestling world? Are they pretty good, the different companies, at spoiling it, or did they keep it under wraps for the most part? They don't.
You can find dirt sheets.
Yeah, it's spoiled, and it's really like two sources that spoil it the most. Okay. So like I typically avoid those, but most of the time it's impossible to avoid. Like you just know like this guy's a free agent and this guy's going to sign, and then you'll start to time it out yourself too. I'm assuming this person is showing up to this show this weekend, and it's all out there. I mean, it's the worst part of the internet era because like, I mean, I think Camille and I have been watching for roughly, I'm older than her, but roughly the same amount of time. In the 90s, like that was the appeal to, you had no idea, where you were legitimately shocked when somebody would show up in the other federation or on TV somewhere else. And now that's, I mean, it's not just wrestling, it's everything that it's gone now.
And that's honestly part of what made me start enjoying wrestling more again, was when I was I had to stop reading certain websites and like the dirt sheets and trying to like, cause I used to just reading like, okay, especially when I was kind of not watching as much, but I just wanted to keep up with what was happening. I'm reading all these different articles.
The last legitimate shock moment, and it shouldn't have even been a shock, but it still was when CM Punk showed up at Survivor Series, where you knew there's a very good chance this was going to happen, but given the history and everything else, you're like, I
didn't believe it.
I'm just hoping this is going to happen. And then when he showed up, and the way they pulled it off too, of let's end the show, and the very last moment he comes out.
And that's what makes wrestling fun, to Justin's point, but why the 90s was such a fun era of wrestling, because you didn't know what was going to happen. So I try to avoid as much as I can now, and just watch the show for what it is, which has increased my enjoyment level, but also the storytelling has been better since Triple H has taken the reins of creative control over Vince McMahon.
That's his corporate name. So
yes. Oh, sorry, Paul Levesque. Yes.
Thank you for clarifying, Justin. Everybody appreciates it. I think that it's a bit of a shame. I mean, it's just kind of like, it's that weird duality where if you want to be involved discussing with other people on the internet, the stuff that is going on, you're inevitably going to run into those. But the wrestling, like the whole draw of it in a lot of ways is the theater of it all. So it is a shame that a lot of that is easy to spoil.
The worst for me, and it seemed like last year was the worst of any year I can remember. I mean, I probably shouldn't divulge too much, but when the Bucks are on the road, I can watch two screens at the same time because I do the games from the radio station. When they're at home, not a great look, especially somebody that's doing the analysis, to be watching a wrestling PLE on your iPad while the game is happening. So I miss those. And for whatever reason, last year, it seemed like every major WWE PLE was the day that the Bucks were playing at home. Like WrestleMania, I had a wedding one night, and then the Bucks played the Knicks the next night. The Royal Rumble I had to miss. And that's the worst because you either like even tweeting out Bucks related stuff, like I got to either block every single keyword or just stay off of Twitter and not know like this person just showed up and have it spoiled for me. So all of those nights I mean, it's probably embarrassing to admit, but stay up until like 4 a.m. and get home from the game and then watch this 3-hour wrestling show.
Yeah. Okay. Second follow-up. Was I correct in stating that if I'm AEW, you WWE, in as much as we're separate entities, but we're in the same space? Or is AEW like connected directly to WWE, or are they two standalone? I don't know how that works.
They're standalone. So in that sense, yes.
Okay. Sounds good. All right,
I'm trying to think of what the best comparison would be, but I mean, it's essentially like comparing like a storied franchise to a newer franchise. It's been pretty good in the same league.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, I think I get it now. Now I can tune in to whatever the next event is. I don't know when that is, but I'm sure it's coming up soon, and I'll catch right up to everything that's going on with the bloodlines and the
they'll bring you on. They have great video packages to catch everybody up if you're new. I
believe. Okay. Then the second simulation station we had here, NBA 2K dropping soon. You download the copy, you're firing it up, you have peace of mind for a couple hours. What's the first thing then that you are going to do with your copy of the game?
The first thing that I am going to do, so my favorite mode to play is the My Career, where you create your individual player, you go play online in the rec, in the park, so on and so forth. So the first thing I tend to do, especially this year, because I'm not making that many builds, I am going to go pull up all the rosters and I'm going to look at what already NBA players are ranked. So I can get a kind of an idea of how I want to make my player. And then I will be in the My Career builder for hours upon hours upon hours. Testing animations, trying to find the right build, because my play style is a big guard. I like making big point guards, and my play style is in line with like Chris Middleton. Like, let's go glory day. Chris Middleton is probably how I play on 2K.
So the first round series?
Oh yeah, Pacers. Like, I have actual clips from 2K of my friend being like, "Okay, Camille Middleton's out on the court." Like it's real. The mid game is real. So. I'll be in the builder for hours, maybe all day tomorrow.
Wow, already tomorrow. I'm more of more nerdy with my interests in it. Like I don't do most of the, not just for 2K, for Madden and the only video game I ever remember creating my player and trying to get him up to the majors was the show.
Oh, that's a great one.
Or like MVP baseball, where you'd create your own player and play through the minor leagues. For the most part, I was the nerd that like way back when, before its triumphant return this summer, when the college football games, I was the person that would go through painstakingly updating rosters or just sending out my memory card for somebody to send it back to me. And I would do the same with like Madden and every other game. I'll do it with 2K. The first thing I do is I go to team rosters and I just look at, that's not actually what he wears, and just like make those updates and change the shoes. So like that's my major point of interest with the game.
That's awesome. I haven't played 2K in a while, but when I always would do it, I saw people, other Bucks fans, who would be like, "Oh, I got picked by the Bucks, drafted by the Bucks." I never wanted to be picked by the Bucks because I felt bad displacing one of my guys from the rotation. It's like, I don't want to be. Why am I here trying to put Jabari Parker out the league? I'm not trying in a simulation game. That's messed up. So I never wanted to be picked by the Bucks. But Camille, do you have like a preference? Do you care which team you get drafted to? Or
I care big time. I want to go somewhere I'm going to want to play. So, for
Understandable.
example, the Bucks was not a team that I picked often last year as a point guard. Because like they got Dame, and then not trying to go that route. So I'll look for a point guard needy team and just go through it and see what pops up, and maybe try to pick the worst of the point guard needy teams to make my career a little bit more interesting, since this year is like a dynasty aspect of trying to stay on one team for seasons upon seasons and see if you can make them a dynasty. So that should be kind of fun. So I'm going to look for a bad team that needs a point guard. So if anybody has suggestions, throw them out there.
Camille Davis, you are a Washington Wizard.
Oh, I don't know if I want to go that bad. That's bad.
You're running from the grind.
Yeah. When I was in college, my roommate and I used to play NBA Live, and we would the street ball version of it, where you're just playing 2-on-2 at like Rucker Park, and we would keep a notebook every single game that was played, like what the score was, who won, and a running tally of who had won the most games on NBA Live. So the time that my parents came to visit, like, what is this notebook? Like, well, that's really what I've been doing with your money here at college, is just playing video games. Do you do the dynasty mode in college football, Camille?
I haven't I did the superstar, the road to glory.
That's the one. Yeah, I don't do the player. I do the coach. And that's where I have just a laundry list of rules. Like, has to be a Nike school. I'm not entertaining. I'm not about the 3-stripe life. So I'm not going there. If you're Under Armour or Adidas, it has to be a Nike school. Has to be in one of the main conferences, but can't be too good. But this new one, I finally,
I got a good pick for you.
About that, although I would gladly displace PJ Fleck. This new one, though, I didn't realize, like, you basically make your choice immediately. So I got to one off season and got, I think it was the Badgers that I got an offer to run. And I mean, it didn't align with my Nike only schools anyway. I was like, nah, I'm good. I'll wait to see what else is out there next week. And it's immediately gone. That you basically have, like, got to take the job or leave it. Otherwise, it gets progressively worse to what's out there.
Yeah.
All right. That brings us to time. This was awesome, guys. Thank you so much for joining. I'll give you a moment here to plug where you're at, Locked On Bucks, personal things. Where can people find you guys?
Locked On Bucks, wherever you get your podcast, and on YouTube, a weekly or a Monday through Friday show. Although we're currently in our off season, doing 3 episodes a week right now, up until I think it's the 16th, Justin, of this month, where we go back to 5 days a week. So make sure you guys check out Locked On Bucks for all your Bucks needs. And then I'm also found on the Technical Foul podcast, TECKNICAL, where, as I mentioned, we do NFL, NBA, and pro wrestling. And then I'm also on Pack a Day, doing Green Bay Packers content on the audio side, and might be coming over to the YouTube side soon as well. So Pack a Day for Packers, Locked On Bucks for Bucks, and then Technical Foul for a bunch of randomness mixed in with those big leagues.
Yeah, Locked On Bucks. For me, once the Bucks season starts, there's random things on the radio side. And I mean, if you're looking for wrestling and non-Wisconsin sports teams, because other than the Bucks and the Packers, like, every one of my favorite teams is out of state. If you're looking for wrestling and St. Louis Blues tweets, then Twitter is the place to find that.
Wonderful. Well, thank you guys so much. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Thank you for those watching. We'll be back again soon with the next edition of the season preview series. Talk again.